The Atlanta Story is a podcast highlighting Atlanta's most interesting creators, entrepreneurs, and builders. I'm Jon Birdsong with Atlanta Ventures, and in today's episode, we have DL Warfield, founder of Goldfinger Creative. DL is a critically acclaimed creative designer and artist. After earning his degree in painting from Washington University, he started his early career for Edison Brothers Stores as an intern and worked his way up to product developer and designer. Tommy Boy Records loved his work, and he soon wore the role of head designer for their clothing line. From Tommy Boy Records, he evolved from New York to Atlanta as the Art Director of L.A. Reid's LaFace Records. While there, he collaborated with some of his favorite artists, including Usher, TLC, Outkast, and Pink. Since 2001, DL has run his own firm, Goldfinger Creative, and makes art. In this episode, we talk about how to get creative, what lessons he's learned in the music industry, and how to stay focused on the craft. We hope you enjoy the show and subscribe to The Atlanta Story. Welcome to The Atlanta Story, everyone. Today we have DL Warfield. DL, thank you so much for being here.
Man, I'm glad to be here. You know, I'm glad that I haven't actually seen you in a while physically. So I guess this is the new normal. So I'll take this. If I can't get the other.
Well, DL, we've got so much to talk about today, including you're a critically acclaimed creative designer, artist. Got your degree in painting from Washington University, while you also starred in football and track and field. From there, started out at Edison Brothers Stores, interned, got picked up and noticed by Tommy Boy Records, Queen Latifah, De La Soul. From there, transitioned to LaFace. After LaFace, and there's a lot at LaFace, right? Working with Usher, TLC, Outkast, to name a few. Started Goldfinger, worked for, I think every brand in major Fortune 500 company, notable one, from a consumer perspective. And then all while on top of it, still creating your art. So we got so much to talk about today. And, you continue to inspire through your Instagram and your story, but let's dive right in.
Okay.
On your website, you wrote that, making the decision to go to Tommy Boy Records was one of the most important decisions in your life. Talk to us about why that was so important and what led you to that. Knowing that you were an artist, all throughout your life, in college, while starring athletically as well.
So it was a few things that happened like right at that point when that Tommy Boy decision was made. I mean, one, like I was working at a place, and then I was also working as a freelance illustrator. But the place that I was working at was like, man, you got to get out of St. Louis. Like you gotta go to L.A. You got to go to New York. Like you got to leave. And so, one side I'm like, man, do they really want me to leave?
Yeah.
And, but then at the same time, like I had felt that I had already hit a glass ceiling and I had only been at Edison Brothers for a short while, like maybe like a year and a half, but I really literally felt it.
You started out as an intern and moved to product developer.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was an intern, and when I graduated, they created a position for me as a product developer designer, and so, which was awesome. So I designed merchandise, all different types of apparel. I was in charge of like all of the labeling and packaging for the products. And then later on, like I started designing retail concept stores. Which was awesome. I mean, I didn't have any architectural experience, but I knew how to make things look good. So they just kind of gave me a shot, and so I did that for like, a couple, like for one other brand. And then for some of the actual Oak Tree stores at the time, so it was cool. It's like, one thing, the reason why I was able to do that is because I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I was just doing it and trying it without approaching something like, man, like I don't know how to do this. If they gave me a lane or opportunity, I would just try to exploit it.
Gotcha. And so the lane that you were in, you hear people always say, "Oh, stay in your lane, stay in your lane." But it seems like at Edison, you were able to not only stay in your lane, but also expand it almost. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
This is correct. And one of the reasons for that is that they never had anybody in their company like me. And so literally like the position was created and they just gave a title, and they was, so it was kind of like, well, this young kid, he has good fashion sense and he's an artist, but he's also played sports, but he's really in the streets and he knows what's going on. Let's call him this. And then we're pretty much going to let him do whatever we need, And so like, every day I could kind of be doing something new, like they would take me to, like different fashion events. And so like, like the magic show, which I'm not even sure if they do the magic show anymore, but like those fashion trade shows that they used to do, like they would take me there so I can kind of see what was going on and what other industries were, what other brands were doing. Then I would just literally, I can go back to my hotel and just kind of sketch things up on how I kind of see it. And I could, we could fax it to factories and they can start developing things. So nice. It was almost like I was like a walking Polaroid camera to some degree, And so that was kind of cool.
Did Tommy Boy Records find you or did you find them? Like, how did you create that early collaboration?
All right. So, Tommy Boy, while I was at Oak Tree, all right, this is funny. So while I was at Oak Tree, I had an opportunity. I had like an NFL pro day a year after I graduated. So I did the pro day, and then from the pro day, I got invited down to a supplemental like combine, like free agent thing workout, right?
Okay.
So before I went to that, I interviewed at Tommy Boy. How I met Tommy Boy was at a trade show. I met a manufacturer designer. We became cool, and so I would buy stuff from his line. And then he started doing production for the brand that I work for. And from that, he was like, man, like I got a friend that works at Tommy Boy and they want to start a clothing line. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, you should interview for it. I'll send them your stuff. So they sent them my stuff, and then that's what started the interviewing process. Right.
And this was pioneering the clothing line at record labels, right? I mean, it's not like there was a blueprint.
Correct. Like they were the first ones. Like they were before everybody, And so yes, yeah, they were before everybody. And so when all of the chips fell out from football, like I had opportunities to go play for two different teams in Canada. One contract was for $21,000. The other contract was for like $22,500. Tommy Boy offered me $47,500. Yep. So literally I was like, well, they're paying me. Yeah. It's like, I'm going to New York, And so that's how it got there,
And was this late 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, this was like 93, 94.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had just signed Queen Latifah and, did you know, I mean, at what degree of success had Tommy Boy Records, achieved, right? Was it an early startup or were there 50 employees?
You know what? Yeah, it was like a small mid-sized company. So I would probably say Tommy Boy had between 30 and 50 employees, maybe.
Yep. Okay.
And like, I think Queen Latifah, like she had just did her last album, I think, on Tommy Boy. But like their artists that they were really active with at the time was House of Pain, Naughty by Nature.
Naughty by Nature.
Yeah. Coolio at that time. Yeah.
Really?
So Coolio was the star. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So it's funny, like my first day in the office at Tommy Boy, maybe my second day, but I'm walking down the hall and I look in one of the offices and Coolio was in there smoking weed with like one of the employees. And so coming from St. Louis like that just blew my mind. Like, what? Like this is going on. And it was during the day. It was like 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were smoking
just
weed.
Regular.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's
just
good.
on a Tuesday.
Yep. Yep. And so this was right around Gangster's Paradise, right?
Correct.
The movie.
Correct.
So that was 94. Okay.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah.
Okay. So Tommy Boy, you come in and you're like, all right, we're creating a clothing line. What's step one of creating a clothing line back then and fast forward to today?
Well, back then, like my approach was to always try to come up with a theme, like whatever the theme is, because I knew it was going to be like a small collection. So land on a theme and then build and create everything that supports that theme and core idea. And but I think the problem with Tommy Boy is one, like they had never did a clothing line.
Yep.
And they didn't really understand or have a grasp of, like when you're building a clothing line, like the merchandise has to work in layers so that people can buy the whole collection. So a clothing line isn't 3 sweatshirts and a hat, And so their thought process was kind of like that. But I came from a brand like the Oak Tree where we had over 350 retail stores, and we had multiple clothing lines within our retail stores that were like SKU level, like SKU number deep. And so like the early frustration was that like they just didn't get that,
Yep.
And so like when you come from doing,
is that really storytelling? Because if someone buys, a t-shirt or 3 sweatshirts and a hat, that's different than buying, the different layers of the brand.
You're absolutely correct. And it's like, you can't really set a mood by just being surface level. You have to have other things like, you make the jacket, but then you also make the sweatshirt, and then you have the hat. And by the way, like you can get these gloves, here are the fleece bottoms that we're doing with the whole. It's really, really everything. So, like you want somebody to like kind of like walk by a retail store and look in the window and say, no, I got to have that whole thing, versus them just going and picking your t-shirt off the rack, And so that's kind of like how they thought about it versus how I was taught and how I had worked and did it.
So how is that different today on the e-commerce world where, people are scrolling and just selecting, right? How do you create that whole package?
Well, it starts off with really just building a brand. And so, if you have an e-commerce store, I think like the designs and the photos that you use to market your business, like that's really going to help set the tone, for like what you're about. And so I think, there is a lot of retail stores and designers that do it, do a very, very good job. But then at the same time, there's retail stores that are very successful that are almost function like Instagram feeds. And I think, and to me, I think those tend to really speak to younger consumers because they're just kind of scrolling and like, I want that now, like the more sophisticated youthful consumer, like they want to get the story and find out the back, like the information and how it was created and what this brand was about. Other people just, it's just kind of like, they want a fast result. Like they want instant gratification, and so you kind of deal with those two things. And I think to be like a successful, sustainable brand, you have to be able to function both ways. So you have to build your layers of storytelling and information, for those that want it. But at the same time, you got to be able to serve fast food, and so I think it has to work both ways.
So your time at Tommy Boy Records, what were some of the learnings that you had? And not only the learnings, but how did you carve out your niche when, LaFace started and you were the top person that L.A. Reid called to say, let's go?
Well, at Tommy Boy, I think like, honestly, the biggest thing that I learned is that sometimes people are just not going to like your ideas. And when they don't like those ideas, like, how are you, what is your response to it? And so at Tommy Boy, I went through a period where like I was designing and doing all of this stuff and like the brand really wasn't getting it, and so like they were just thinking about a graphic tee. I'm thinking about actually building a collection. And so, sitting on different sides of the table, like it took a while for us to actually really kind of get in alignment because I'm like, you guys don't know what you're talking about and it doesn't make sense. But, like they were the bosses. And so, while I was there, like I was extremely, frustrated working there. And so then I started reading Think and Grow Rich,
Yeah.
and I think like,
Hill.
yeah. And so that really like changed my whole mindset. So like at Tommy Boy, like I would do whatever they wanted, whatever they asked of me. But at my lunch breaks, like I was going out and showing my portfolio to everybody in the city. So whether it was Bad Boy or Uptown Records or GQ magazine, like I was showing what I could do. And so while my work environment was frustrating, I had other people that were paying me as a freelancer for my perspective and for my talent. So that's what balanced it off, so it took a minute for me to just say, look, I just got to do what these people want me to do. But let me go out in the streets and let me go meet with people and give them, what I considered to be greatness at that time.
Yep. So while you were doing that, you came across LaFace?
Okay, so LaFace, so you remember when I said that I came down to like this free agent workout in Atlanta? Mm-hmm. So when I came to Atlanta, I had my portfolio. A girl that I went to high school with worked for the radio station. She was like, you know what? You should like go and take, show people your stuff at LaFace, right? And so I did it, and I ended up meeting a woman named Devette Singletary, right?
Okay.
So fast forward, like they didn't have a budget to hire a designer or a creative director, but we kept in contact. She ended up buying a painting that I did of Miles Davis and gave it to L.A. Reid for his birthday.
Okay.
So I'm up at Tommy Boy working. A year later, they called and they were like, we would love to interview you as our creative director.
So this is probably like 95?
95, yeah. And so I was like, awesome. So
Braves are hot. The Olympics are coming.
Right.
Atlanta, Outkast had just came out with, I guess that was pre ATLiens, obviously.
Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music.
Yep.
And it's funny, like even before I had the opportunity to interview for LaFace, like I was living in St. Louis when Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music dropped. When I heard that song, I was like, I want to work for LaFace Records. Because I knew LA and Babyface's history. And I'm like, man, like if they can take their touch and put it on the hip hop, like I want to be a part of that,
Yep.
So going back to the LaFace story. So I interviewed, had a great interview, go back to New York. A few days after that, like I do my follow-up and I'm like, hey, so did you guys make any decisions? And so Devette told me that they, she was advised to consider like more seasoned candidates because I had never worked as a creative director.
Sure.
And she was going to get back to me. And I was like, oh, okay. So that same day, I told my supervisor that I wasn't feeling well and I went home from work early. On the way home from work, I went by a prop store. I bought like fake dynamite, a clock, like some clay, wiring and all of this kind of stuff. And I packaged it up to make it look like an actual bomb. And so then I cut out letters out of magazines and newspapers to make it look like a ransom note. And the ransom note said, hire DL Warfield to get the job or else. So I connected it all, wound the clock. The clock had batteries. So I connected it all, packaged it up, FedEx it to L.A. Reid. After he got the package, like an hour later, they said, if he has to send LA said, if he has to send a bomb down here to get the job, hire his ass. And that's what got me to LaFace.
Really?
Yeah.
That's creative.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also like, what are you going to do, when the pressure's on, you know what I mean? Like, and I felt that because I felt that job was mine, and right. Even me and my wife, we were kind of already planning, like, when we get to Atlanta, and she had never even been to Atlanta, right. But we were already planning. So when I heard that, I'm like, oh, hell no, like I'm getting that damn job. And so that was like a critical decision. And so I kind of like making decisions like that, especially in situations like those. Like I attribute that to like every single thing that I learned in sports,
Interesting. Because it's those moments will can change the course of your life.
Absolutely. And how you act during times where, adversity is taking place. I think that's really what defines you, versus, hitting a hole in one your first time golfing. Like having to fight for something and figure things out, when things are stacked against you. I think that's what makes you. So
the package was sent. They believed in you as much as you believed in them. And you moved from New York to Atlanta, which I'm sure people in New York and LA were like, why are you going down to Atlanta?
No, actually nobody was mad. I think that because Atlanta was starting to bubble, and so, people at Tommy Boy, like my friends that were there, everybody knew L.A. Reid and Babyface. So you're not going to discredit them. So it was kind of like I was going to Atlanta, but I'm going to work for these guys.
Right.
And so that was like going to work for the Justice League. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I kind of landed and hit the ground with instant credibility.
And we're going to take a quick break here and share that this podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business out of Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com. So what is a young creative director walking in the door first day do at a place that is, renowned for their leadership and for their creativity?
The first thing that I did on day one was say, hey, you guys don't have any Macintosh computers in here.
No way.
So that was the first thing. So it was funny, awesome. Man. Like literally it was nothing in there. It was nothing that I could use to do any work. Right.
Where was their HQ?
It was in Buckhead. It was in the 3350 Peachtree building, which was, Blue Cross Blue Shield building. So it was like the 15th floor and the 11th floor. Yeah. But it was there, but they didn't, because they've never had like a creative director or designer. Like in New York, like Arista was pretty much doing everything, even though Atlanta would drive the creative. And so it was funny, man. I didn't even have an office when I first got down there.
Right.
And so, they had to move people around and things like that. But yeah,
so you said we need to buy a couple Macs.
Yeah. So I had, my wife was still in New York. I had her ship my computer down, and they had a stand in Buckhead in the Summerfield Suite. So I was literally I'd go to the office for a couple of hours and I would go to my room, and I would do whatever it is that I would have to do. And then I just started reaching out to people that I had relationships with that were photographers and designers and things like that, because, even being the creative director, I would design and work on some stuff. I had to manage outside creatives and also the internal creatives that work for me, so I had to just really get up to speed, on everything. And LaFace had never had a creative director, and I had never worked as a creative director. So together we kind of came up with systems on how we were going to actually do things.
Now, so ATLiens came out in 96. Usher's 8701 was right around that time?
Yeah. No, it was August 2001.
Yep. Okay. August 2. Yeah. And then, My Way, Usher's My Way was prior
before
to that.
Yeah. That was during LaFace days. So 8701 came out after LaFace was sold,
Okay,
so LaFace was sold, and LaFace was sold, I think, it pretty much shut its stores June 2000, and so 8701 came out August 7th, 2001. So My Way was that was during LaFace days.
98 or something. Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay. So creative director, you're ordering the Macs, and then talk to us about some of your first projects, right? So you're at LaFace from 95 to 2000 when it was sold.
Correct.
Oh man. Mm-hmm. Talk about
So it was what drove the company was just the love for the artist and the music. And then I
Yes.
think that like they did a great job of like hiring, like we had a really good staff that was really good at our jobs. And most of the people that worked there were very competitive. And so like our thought process is we want to kick everybody in New York's ass. We want to kick everybody in Los Angeles, like in California's ass. Like literally that was our thought process. Like we want to be better than anybody. And so when you have a bunch of employees that are like that, that have big responsibilities, like everybody pushed each other, you know?
Yes.
And so for the most part, LaFace was high stress, you know, because it was always like tension. But when it was stressful, that was when the label was at its hottest. When everything was calm, then that means we really didn't have any artists that were active and things like that. So, you know, so the more stressful it is, the hotter our label was.
So did L.A. Reid, was he the culture setter? I mean, was he working 20-hour days? Like what was the culture of LaFace?
You know what, like Black excellence, you know, like I think that was really like the culture of LaFace. You know, LA was definitely the culture setter. You know, like LA has, I mean, I don't know if you've ever been around him, but he has like impeccable taste, you know. And,
I saw him driving down Piedmont about a year ago, and I think in his red Bentley. I was just, you know, sitting outside of a bar, but he just rolled through.
But literally, like everything is first class, from album release to like baby showers in the conference room. Like everything is first class. And so I think like that was one of the biggest things that I remember about LaFace, just like the class level, like everything was first class, you know. But then also like LA is a real music guy and he's a perfectionist, you know. And so like we could have an artist that was a great artist and the record is ready to go out. He wouldn't put the record out if that artist needed to get braces. You know what I mean? So he was like a stickler for all kinds of things like that.
Wow.
And long term, like it made sense. So some people would be like, man, we should just put it out anyway. And he was like, nah, everything has to be right, you know, which, you know, could drive us crazy at times. Cause like you might think that things are finished and like that shit is never finished until it's like getting manufactured, you know? And so I had plenty of situations where, you know, like things were ready to go. And then they might change the sequence of the songs and then add 2 songs and take 2 songs off. And so then you got to reconfigure all of the packaging. But like we used to have a bunch of situations like that.
So that's a good segue to 1996 ATLiens. You know, you were the artist for the album cover, which, I mean, when you think of album covers, there's that one sticks out more than just about anyone.
Right.
Walk us through that process of did you listen to the whole album first and then come together and say, all right, this is what it should look like? Or did you have a couple themes, or how did that?
It happened in like 10 seconds. And so,
wow,
like, it was like one evening, it was probably about 7 or 8 o'clock, you know, like, so my office was like I was on the side of the building with LA. So it was really just like my creative office and then him and Babyface's office, you know? And so we shared a lobby. So we were, so me and LA was in the lobby talking, and then Big and Dre came in and they was like, we got the name for the album. And LA said, what? And they said, ATLiens. And I said, let's do a comic book. And that was literally it, you know? And so like everybody high-fived and then we just kind of like got to work. And so, you know, the process was awesome because it was very, very inclusive with the artist ideas and concepts and things. We utilized Big Rube from the Dungeon Family, who actually just wrote like the script for Morgan Freeman for 21 Savage. I just read that. But, you know, so after I made that statement, let's do a comic book, like the next day, you know, I was sitting in the conference room and I was just doing concept sketches for the covers, you know, composition, you know, with the lights coming down. I just wanted to look really dramatic. Yep. And at the time, like I was reading a lot of comics from like Todd McFarlane, you know, Spawn comics and Spawn. And I forgot the other ones that I was reading at the time because I really liked, you know, I really like how the illustration is really elevated. So looking through those, I found one of Todd McFarlane's cover illustrators, a gentleman named Frank Gomez. And so, I was a drawer, an illustrator painter. I could have did it, but stylistically, like I wanted it to look just like a real comic book. So, I hired Frank Gomez to redraw my sketch in his illustrative style. And that is how we got to where it is. And so, like, as far as the storyline, like collaboratively, like everybody had a part in really developing and crafting this storyline, but Big Rube actually penned it all. And it was awesome. And I think, one of the best part about it to me was like how good the guys felt about the artwork. That was the best part.
So when it all comes together, right, and you see, you open up the package for the first time, and it's got the album cover. What's that feeling like? Right. I mean, months of work.
Right. So honestly, man, like when I work on things like that, like I just want to get it done. Like after I come up with the idea, like that is like, it's like I won and I'm out. You know what I mean? Because I'm always thinking about next. And then that just kind of goes back to sports, playing college football. I make a touchdown. I put it to the back of my head because I'm like, I got to get another one, And so like, even with the album packaging, like I'm thinking, okay, like the next thing has to be better than that. And the next thing has to be better than that. So like by the time we actually get the physical pieces in our hand, like I think it's great, but it's far from me moved from it because I'm probably putting out fires and dealing with other issues. So like I never really had to celebrate anything that, people can see because I got to get on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so with Outkast, with ATLiens, I mean, it was the same way.
So side tangent. Dre pops up every now and then. You saw the recent video, I'm sure of I guess him playing the clarinet or what was it?
Yeah.
Any insight onto what
I spoke to him? Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And like I spoke to him, like I think like 2 weeks ago, like he just called me randomly, and so we were just talking about the text, getting Dre to respond anything like immediately, like don't bet your life on that. But we back and forth, or I'll just send him shit that I think is cool, and so we had gone back and forth because he was trying to he was trying to source like where should he go take Adobe Illustrator to tour. So I would just send him links on places to go and just different websites that offer like things for Procreate and Photoshop as well. But at any rate, he's living in Venice Beach, and he was like he's just taking the time to like really learn things right now. And so, he said that he's been learning how to read sheet music, which, he's never done that, which I think is awesome,
Right.
And that's that. But like Dre, man, is like a true artist. And it's funny, like the random places that he would pop up. Like I remember, like I used to run in, like I would just pop into him at like Michael's Crafts in Alpharetta. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Because I live in Alpharetta, but I'm like, What are you doing in Alpharetta? He's like, oh man, because if I go in the city of Atlanta, like people just, they just run up and they won't let me. And I was like, but this is like when like Outkast was like really out. And it's like, so I got, I get it, but,
sure.
But yeah, so like Dre is like, he doesn't want anything the easy way. You know what I mean? And I think like if you ask Dre to come up with a clothing line, and you got funding and investors, like Dre might say, okay, cool. And then all of a sudden, like he's enrolling in fashion school in Italy to learn how to design clothes. Like, so he approaches it from the inside. He approaches it from the inside out, which I have, which I respect,
Absolutely.
He approaches it from the inside out. And yeah.
And obviously Outkast was just one of a few very successful artists on LaFace Records. Obviously Usher, and then TLC, you did the FanMail album cover as well. How did that come about? And I mean, TLC, mid to late 90s, they were it, right? I mean, they were pop.
Yeah. And all of those girls, they were like great to work with because they really respected creativity and they always wanted something that was out of the box. And that's the way that I like to think and approach things also. Like you'll never hear it. Like at that time, you would never hear them say, oh, it just needs to be simple. No, they wanted the far out shit. So the funny thing, like with the TLC FanMail album cover, I think like I pretty much designed that like maybe 2 or 3 years before the album actually even came out. Right. And like I was looking through a photography magazine and I found this French photographer named Seb Geniac. And he did a fashion shoot with Naomi Campbell, and everything was very like so synthetic and android looking, And so I just tore it out and I was like, LA, when TLC does their next album, this is how we got to do it. Right. So years later, that album came out. At the time, like Dallas had came up with this concept of another TLC member named Vicky, and I think Vicky was the actual
Dallas
acronym
Austin,
for the
right?
Dallas Austin. Yes, so I think Vicky was the actual acronym for the software that he was using, like the digital software, and because of the sound of it, I was like, man, like this will line up perfectly, like this whole look. And so at that time, like the label wasn't really sold on it. So I was like, okay, let me just so I took some old photos of them and I did a quick mock-up. I sent it to like a 3D lenticular printing company in LA. They made some samples. As soon as I got them back, I just sent them to the girls and gave them to LA and everybody went crazy. And so I had to actually show and prove my concept and everybody bought in. And that's pretty much how it happened.
Interesting. Well, so five-ish years at LaFace, and then LaFace gets sold. What, then you transition to full-time entrepreneur, right? Via Goldfinger.
Correct. Yeah.
And
yes.
So you have a decade worth of experience on, the most consumer of consumer sides, right? I mean, it's direct to consumer.
Right.
Walk us through how you went from putting on kind of the employee hat to the entrepreneur hat, and how did you go about and get kind of your first paying customers on the Goldfinger front?
Well, I had the foresight to I always thought eventually like I would kind of be doing my own thing, but I didn't know like when it would happen, and I think, sometimes people say that, but I've always been like a hustler trying to figure out and trying to like make money on the side. Right. And the way that my contract was set up at LaFace was that I was allowed to freelance, and so I could freelance for anybody. But when it got down to music, I was able to they allowed me to work on 7 music projects outside of LaFace, which was fine because like I couldn't really managing everything that was happening at LaFace, like I couldn't really deal with that much more anyway.
Yeah, you had to bring on folks like Mike Jordan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But so literally, like while I was at LaFace, like I'd be at LaFace all day, then I would come home and then I would be working on freelance projects till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And but when you're young, like you can do that. But so I set up Goldfinger actually while I was at LaFace.
Okay.
So when I was billing and invoicing, everything was coming in under Goldfinger CS. And so when LaFace was sold, like I already had clients, like I was already working with brands and things like that, And so one of the mistakes that I did make was that like I never really set up like an infrastructure for my business. Like I was just like working like freelance, but I didn't build the business as a business. So like the business was like me as a freelancer.
Sure.
So if I got sick, the business shut down, or something like that. And so I had freelance employees that work with me, they would probably work like 20 to 30 hours. I had like 4 designers, and my office was like right up under the Stankonia office, which was in West Midtown area. And but still, like I never really I never really set it up as a business. So
Sure.
like, how am I going to market? You know, I don't know. I just got to get this logo done. You know, how
Right.
am I going to, you know, so those are like early mistakes that I made that I eventually had to kind of like figure out, you know, like what it's going to be, like, how are we going to actually do sales? You know, in the beginning, like I was just getting phone calls and phone calls and phone calls. But when phone calls slow down, then you're like, oh shit, like maybe we need to get press, you know?
Yep.
And so at that time, you know, like never really running in business, like that was one of the mistakes that I made, is like really creating an architecture on how Goldfinger was going to actually operate.
Sure. So we've interviewed artists and designers on the Atlanta Story before, and so we have listeners who are creatives. What is your one or two pieces of advice that you would say, you know, the creative that's working at the corporation wants to go off and break off to their own, and they're doing the side hustle at night, 2 a.m. Like what are some of the lessons that you would tell them right now, where here's what you need to do to take the leap full time?
Right. Well, I think the first thing, like they have to have an understanding that it's not as easy as it looks. You know, and a lot of times people that I talk to, they're like, oh man, you know, it gets so great to work for yourself. And I wish I could work for myself. And, you know, but it's not that. It's not like literally like, you know, people that have jobs, like if I was to consider them, like if we were all in college, like they have the full on meal plan, you know what I mean? Like,
yep.
But if you're an entrepreneur, like, no, like you don't have a meal plan. Matter of fact, you just have a bow and arrow and you got to go out there and kill something to eat it. So
yes.
That is kind of like, yeah. So you have to understand that you have to be like that. Like you have to.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah. You have to be more of like a gladiator. So understand that first. And then I think second thing, especially like if you're creative, like you have to have somewhat of a system in place, you know, on how you're actually going to do work. So whether it's organizing, like what is your production timeline, you know, like who is making sure that all your agreements get signed, like what is your billing process? Like those are all very, very important things that creatives have to take into account that we're not taught in school. Like
yep.
artists and designers are not taught how to run a business. Like we're just taught how to make art, you know, and I think like that is one of the downfalls, I think, of art school, you know, because being in art school and working as an artist is not the same. And I've done it on both sides, from a designer, creative director, and a fine artist. It is absolutely not the same. You're doing the same things, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
You know?
So I want to touch on a couple things there. One is, you know, you wear so many hats, right? Entrepreneur, creative designer, and then artist, right? I mean,
right.
Your work is magnificent, and you know, just seeing not only the stuff that you put out on your website, but also on Instagram. I mean, you really bring in the kind of traditional to contemporary, right? Where you see Marilyn Monroe and Biggie, and you see Rihanna and JFK. So how do you wear all of those hats, right? Can you walk us through back to the productivity point? Like, do you say, all right, from 8 to 11, I'm going to do my fine arts, and then from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I'm going to do work on creative projects? How do you break up your day?
Well, first of all, it's easy for me to do it just because like how I work is kind of like how I live my life. You know what I mean? I'm into a lot of different things, and I'm always looking for inspiration. So everything is really, really integrated. As far as business goes, like working as a fine artist and working as a creative director designer, like it's all deadline based, you know? And so like if I have projects for brands or entertainers and things like that, like I'm working to meet that deadline, you know? And then like as a fine artist, like if I'm working on commissions, like I'm working to meet that deadline. So everything is pretty much set up on a on a deadline calendar situation. Like my fine art studio is like around the corner from my house. And so I like having, and then I have like a design office in my basement, but I like having those separate, so the way that I think about it becomes a little bit different when I'm in two different environments, and so I like working on two different things in two different places. It just gets down to like the deadline. So, so just recently, like I just wrapped up designing like T.I.'s new album cover like yesterday. That project kind of came last minute, but at the same time, like I'm fitting, so I had to put that stuff on hold, attack what he needed to do, and then now I'm back on my, and on the design side, I do have like other freelance and outside designers that I work with. So when things get really heavy, like I use them to like help me accomplish whatever it is that I got to deliver. Beautiful.
So back to the T.I.'s album. I mean, when you talk to a creative and they're like, "Oh, I would love to design T.I.'s album cover and help with the brand," right? Is that just years and years of building and relationships where he saw you and y'all met at an industry event, or how did you develop that relationship being on your own at Goldfinger?
Well, one, like while I was at LaFace, like all of the artists knew that when I worked on their project, like I was going to give it like everything that I had to make them look as dope as we possibly could. Right. And so they knew I was going to do that. Like they knew I was not going to take any shortcuts and I was going to push it. Like the only thing that would ever slow us down was budget, and time. But other than that, like I was always working to help elevate whatever it is, whatever their idea was. And so they knew that, and then they knew as far as being a creative person and having creative conversations, like the things that we would speak about, like I would show authentic interest in what their idea it was. But I would also try to inspire them to take whatever it is that they were doing to a whole nother level. So they knew that also. And so I guess over the years, and even like Andre, 3000 was even quoted saying is like one of the things that he loved working with me is that I was able to think different at a drop of a dime, and so that's like, but that comes from years of reading, years of seeing things, years of trying things. And so when somebody proposes a question to you, you can see it in 360 degrees versus just seeing it one way. And so, so that is how I see things. So playing sports, okay, well, how am I going to return this kickoff? You got to process information really, really fast and then make decisions based on experiences. So, I can look at sports like that. And then working, in an art school and having some of the teachers that were extremely demanding, like them making me justify the creative decisions that I would make, that made me, that also added to like my years of experience. And so like working with any of these Atlanta-based artists, like they know how I think and they understand how I think, So and if they don't know that, then they have seen something and it's like, oh, you the guy that did that, And so, like, I don't work on as much music things as I did in the past. So, like, these younger generation of hip hop artists and entertainers, like, they don't know me that much. But when I do work with them and they find out what I did, they're like, "Oh shit, you did that! I remember having that on my, Mm-hmm. And then I think it shakes them up a little bit when I'm able to do something like 96, but then in 2020, I can still do things and they like, damn, and that just becomes like from just really being engrossed in the culture, and I think, and so I don't have to research it. Like I'm involved in it.
So that's a lead on question to the next one on how do creatives maintain that edge? Right? How do you not get complacent? How do you treat every day like you are an intern with that, intern drive and stay engrossed in the culture.
Yeah, but I think that's a great statement. Like, treat every day like you're an intern, and I think that's pretty much it. Like, I have great mentors. I have some great young people that I actually mentor, and I've never ever thought, like, regardless on the success I had as a designer or artist or how I was paid, like, I've never thought that I knew everything. And I always wanted to learn more, and I always wanted to do better. And so to me, like, just the idea of, like, never being satisfied and always wanted to do something greater than the last time, like, that is what personally drives me. And I would, any artist that's out there that's seeking inspiration or thinking about longevity, it's like, I would just tell them, always strive to do something better. Even if the shit don't come out better, like, strive to do something better. And, like, when people, people have asked me a bunch of times, like, what is my favorite art piece, or what is my, my best art piece? And I always tell them it's my next piece. Like, I hope that whatever I do next is better than what I did before. And so I think, as an artist, it's easy to get complacent because of pats on the back or financial success, and so you feel that you always have to keep doing and delivering what you want to do, what you've been successful at. But, I'm like, I just want to try new things, and I think it keeps me interested, and I always want to learn. And so you can't learn by doing the same thing over and over again. You got to try different things.
DL, it's amazing. I mean, we always say for guests on the Atlanta Story, 30 minutes. And now I see that we're coming up on 50, a few more questions to wrap up. On social media, you obviously prioritize family, in the industry of creatives and music, not always the case. What, me being a recent-ish father, what lessons do you have for the dads out there that, have a 2.5-year-old like myself?
I would probably say 2.5 is a great age. Also, I mean, I think, like, that's an age where, like, you're still you're like a superhero. You walk in the house, Daddy. You know what I mean? So that is like that's a great age. It does change, but that's a great age. But I would say, like, as a dad, like, definitely, like, don't be afraid to have standards. But, like, have those standards, matched with, like, love, and don't be afraid to be demanding, but that demand needs to be matched with being loving also. And so I think, like, me and my wife, I mean, we had standards, and we both were demanding, with our kids, and so we just want to push them. And, like, we tell them all, like, we see the greatness in you before you guys see it in yourself. And so, I think, like, those are like two things. Then, just be real with them. I know, like, my relationship with my two was real, but it was also very playful, and, I never really worried about being their friend. Like, I think sometimes parents want to be their kid's friend. Like, I didn't, that was never really a concern with me, but I definitely wanted them to know that I love them. And so I would probably say just that, I think that other than that, like, I mean, and you probably experienced this also, like before you had your child, like, I could probably tell you every single thing that you should do as a dad. But, like, when you actually hold that baby for the first time, like, you just kind of figure it out, you know what I mean? And like, I remember, like, when the nurse walked out of the room and just left me and my wife and my daughter, I was like, oh shit, like, what are we supposed to do? But you can figure it out naturally. And so, I think, like, that's definitely one of the great things about being a parent. Like, you just kind of figure it out,
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so in the COVID world, how do people find your artwork? How do people find more about Goldfinger? Give us a obviously a quick Google search. You come up with a lot of things that you've done. But any particular plug?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can follow me at DL Warfield. You can follow kind of my design and inspiration site, which is Goldfinger_CS. And I'm trying to think what else. And then my website is dlwarfield.com. I keep it simple. And my design site is Goldfinger Creative. So follow me on those and check those things out. Like I try to post daily, but man, honestly, I just posting everything. I'm like, man, I don't even just having to think about what am I going to say, So it's like a job and a task that I'm not a really big fan of, but I just kind of do it, it's really a checkbox. And,
right.
Man, I think in 2000 and whenever MySpace first hit and I had my Goldfinger presentation books, I had in that book, unfortunately, social media will decide the future of all of us. It was a heading of one of the pages. And people were like, oh, you should take that out because, this client is really big on social media. It's well, I'm not taking it out. And so then I look at where it is now and the value that is placed on social media and likes and things like that, which also I don't know if you checked out the art show that I did in 2019, but it was called A Million Likes. But it was just based on it was based on the madness of social media, man. And just how people lose themselves,
Yeah.
So, but so at any rate, that's where you could find me, on social media leaned up against somebody's Bentley, with a Louis Vuitton backpack on. Just follow me on social media.
And the last question we always ask participants on the Atlanta store: why Atlanta, and what has Atlanta done for you?
You know what? Atlanta is a great city. I think Atlanta has the best artists in the world. I think we are definitely leading music number one driver. I think that connects everybody, across the globe. And, fine art is definitely on its way up. So I think that's one reason why Atlanta. Two, I mean, from a historic standpoint, it's the birthplace of civil rights. And so, that's another reason. And what is Atlanta done for me? It gave me a great place to really make an impact on creative culture, and inspire others. And then also, it allowed me and my wife to come here and set up our roots and build a family. Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
DL, thank you for being a part of the Atlanta story. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And excited to get this interview out. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
This podcast is brought to you by Atlanta Ventures. It was co-produced by JC Lucas and Jon Birdsong. If you are looking to start the next $300 million business in Atlanta, check out the studio at atlantaventures.com and the companies we work with who've done it before. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it at your next coffee meeting or dinner greeting, rate it, and write a benevolent, eloquent review.